Welcome back to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast. We're nearing the end of our off-season series here where we're discussing every season in Survivor history. We're having guests pitch us their favorite seasons before we make our final definitive Purple Rock podcast rankings of every Survivor season. And tonight, Andy and I are talking to our guest, Adam, about the season that started it all, Borneo. So, Adam, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
And as I told Andy several times when we were pitching this as an idea, I really wanted to have you in particular discuss Borneo. You're actually going to discuss 4 seasons with us tonight. But I know you were a huge fan of the season. You often cite it as one of the things you'd like Survivor to go back to. So tell us why you enjoyed Borneo so much.
You almost can't compare Borneo to any other Survivor season because it not only created, Survivor and the phenomenon which it is, it created the TV genre of competitive reality shows for American television. I mean, concepts like voting someone out of a tribe, a tribal council, the concept of immunity. These started with Survivor. And, there are 2 different levels at which you have to talk about the season, both in terms of how good it was as television in its own right, which was fascinating, and then how important it was both for Survivor and for so many other shows that followed. On top of those 2 things, it was also just an incredible cultural phenomenon. I mean, more than 50 million people watched the finale of that season. There were parties all over the country, huge parties of hundreds and thousands of people watching. It was just an amazing thing all around, and one of the last, sort of truly big hits of the pre-cable splintering every audience era.
So yeah, it was definitely important. It was definitely big. Is it still good?
I rewatched this season with my daughters earlier this year. They are now 6. They're 6 and 11, and they kind of wanted to know what all the fuss was about. And I figured that they were old enough to find out. It's interesting how different it is, and I don't know that I could sort of rewatch it from a blank slate and appreciate it. And certainly, retrospectively, the level of strategic play isn't anywhere near as good as it is on almost any subsequent season because you only have basically one person in the show who understands the strategic play of Survivor, Richard Hatch.
That includes like Jeff Probst and like the producers. They didn't understand it either.
Yes, I think they were actually annoyed about the strategic aspect.
No, because they knew once that happened that there would never be another season without that. They thought that they were doing a show about surviving and creating a civilization. I mean, when you watch the show, one thing that's really striking is that it's not until you get to the merge and they have a jury that they even start talking about how you win the show.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come up in the first, 7 or 8 episodes.
Yeah, literally, I had no idea. You had no idea when you're watching it. It was like, next week, somebody comes back. I'm like, what? That's not possible. That seems to break what I understand about it. And yeah, that was the first time you learned is when Greg shows up that we vote at the end.
Yeah, that it's not just they voted that gets down to 2 people and then they have just, one final, immunity battle between the 2 of them to determine who wins. That it actually is a jury vote and that this is a 2-part game. They don't bother doing that because so much of what Probst is talking about as a narrator, and he plays a more active role in talking about camp life in addition to being there at the challenges. It's so much of it, though, is about, can they create a culture out here? Can they create a society? How are they feeding themselves? How are they sleeping? Like, the show is interested in all of this stuff at that point, which it's no longer interested in. I mean, there's nothing on the show now that's about survival. Occasionally you'll have talk about where are we getting our food from, but it's, first and foremost, a game right now, a strategic game at that. And in season 1, it wasn't. In season 1, it was also how will these people from different backgrounds get along? The religious person, the older person, the rural versus urban. The show was very interested in these conflicts. I mean, obviously, you had Real World before it, which was also doing that, but that was in a much more narrowly targeted age group. Here, it was all over the map from Colleen up to Rudy.
Yeah, and like I admit, I'm struggling to know how, and I've always struggled. How do you rate this season? Because obviously, as the first, nothing comes after it, right? Nothing would have come after it without it. But also, it's just so different. And as you say, it's a cultural phenomenon, but it's also in terms of the mix of many different people, many different cultures blending together. It's this an amazing race, and that's it.
The other, I think, incredibly important thing is a point that's not original to me, but goes to Chuck Klosterman wrote about it in one of his books, and that is by one vote, this show set the standard that to win in Survivor meant to play the game of Survivor better. That it was not about who did best in the challenges. It was not about who contributed most to their tribes. It was not who was the more morally deserving person, but that by the 4-3 vote here, it was, they decided we are going to give this to the person who played the game better. And despite the fact that every jury after that could set up their own standards however they want, they have all really abided by that as the metric for success in Survivor.
Yeah, so we get 28 seasons and like one really fantastic podcast, all because Richard Hatch picked closer to Greg Buis's number.
Greg has claimed that
I know,
he actually was going to vote for Richard.
Yeah. Well, the joke isn't as funny that way, John.
I know, but we should clarify in case anyone doesn't realize that.
We also, God, you think about all the things that came out of this season. You had a nice lawsuit coming out of this season.
That's in my notes to discuss.
Let's get into those notes.
No, yeah, okay, well, so we do notes for every season. We actually already sort of touched on the viewership of the show. 52 million viewers for the finale. It averaged a 30 share throughout the season, which means 30% of the TVs that were on anywhere in the country during Survivor were watching Survivor. This season gave us our first ever pagonging. You see what I did there? Some people may or may not have been persuaded to vote out Stacy instead of Rudy at an early tribal council. Stacy actually, as Adam alluded to, she sued the show and claimed that Dirk and Sean told her that was true, that she was targeted by the producers instead of Rudy because they didn't want it to be the three olds going out first. And this I thought was interesting. For the first, and I will go ahead and say the only time it will ever happen, 7 different people received votes at a single tribal council. It was the immediate pre-merge tribal council where only the alliance voted together and 6 other people voted for individuals. We also have our first ever immunity beast because Kelly wins 4 straight immunities.
That's still the record, right?
Was Terry? I think Terry might be 5.
Yeah, Terry Dietz won a lot in a row, and of course won them while he had an immunity necklace. Which was...
I believe Terry's is 5, and I think Ozzy has 5 total.
Maybe
but
Kelly has the record for a woman.
And I think
didn't they reference it like just this recent season?
Yes, they did.
Like, oh, Kelly Wigglesworth flashback.
Fireman Tom won or led to a lot, but I don't believe they were all in a row.
Yeah, he had that one in the middle that Ian won.
And then there's that one at the end that Ian let him win. And then last but not least, this is our first season that features a survivor that ever, quote unquote, unintentionally released a sex tape, because Jenna Lewis eventually would go on to leak a sex tape. There we go. That's all the fun trivia I have. Oh, and I should note, by the way, they did a poll in the audience of the reunion of that first season. 45% of the people wanted Rudy to win. 42% wanted Kelly. 11% said Rich, and 2% of people accidentally picked Sue.
Maybe that was her comp. Like, how big an audience was it? It could have been Sue's family. I mean, probably not all of Sue's family, but
they were probably there. Yeah.
I watched the finale at a large bar on the river here in Philadelphia, which was hosting a party. The local CBS affiliate was hosting a party. I remember Will Mega, who had recently been kicked out of Big Brother, was there as well. And the level of anger when Richard was announced as the winner was overwhelming, because so many people felt, why did he win? He is a bad person. He didn't deserve to win. And, it's interesting when you think about the reaction when Russell Hantz failed to win in his first season.
It's the exact correlation I was about to make.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite. Because for him it was, he played the game so well. Why does the fact that why was he held back by the fact that he was an asshole?
Yep.
And I'll cop. I was pissed that Richard won this at the time.
So was I.
Yeah, I mean, the whole second half, I'm like, go Colleen, go Jervis. And then it's like, okay, fine, go Kelly. And then that. But, you know, there was enough time. I came to terms with it. It's like, it's probably better this way.
Oh, I'll admit that I was all in for the cuddly curmudgeon Rudy.
Yeah, I was never there. I was like, hey, that's fun. It's funny,
Hey.
I guess, when old people are racist and sexist. But yes, this is a long time ago. So
Don't
long
forget
ago.
homophobic.
Yes.
Although
Yes.
he kind of got over it. And
Kind
kinda
of.
didn't.
In the way it's like, all right, this one is okay.
He was generally not a fan of the gays, but, you know, this one exception, Richard, the nudist,
That's right.
he ended up being okay with.
One of the other odd things about this season, they had a reward challenge between the tribes that was judged on artistic merit.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best.
I don't recall if that's ever happened since. This was a challenge where they were supposed to, use whatever supplies they had to create an SOS signal for a passing plane.
Taggy is groggy.
Taggy is groggy. And the other one did like this, concentric circles and flashing. I think there was like fire and smoke.
Yeah. The subjective reward thing, and I think it was just a reward. I don't know if it was immunity or not, but
No, I'm pretty sure it was a reward from I believe it was a Minnesota-based department store.
oh, yeah, okay. I know the one you're referring to. I think you can mention the stores here.
Well, they're not a sponsor of this podcast,
I was
so
going to
they
say
don't
we don't
get
have
anything.
we don't have any competing sponsors
That's right.
to worry about offending.
Nobody's asking us to tell you not to go to the post office or what audiobooks you should listen to, so they don't get any plugs. The knock on it in retrospect is there's only one strategist, but it kind of didn't matter, That wasn't the show it was yet. And it was fascinating for what it was, and even if you go back and look at it, and I assume I probably looked a little bit at it through YouTube clips, but again, I don't go back. It's like cinema verite almost. It's just like trying to capture life in a way that the show doesn't have that much time for now. I'm not sure that's a problem. I'm not sure it would still be interesting 28 iterations later, but it was fascinating then.
Well, I remember there was this whole big public outcry about the fact that they might eat a rat, and then they showed on TV, they ate a rat. These starving people ate a rat, and it was, PETA was involved, and it was this big,
early
public...
think pieces that, I don't know, I guess maybe an actual TV guide, that was the thing.
One of the things the show did not have then, it did not have that segment before Tribal Council that is the post-immunity challenge. Let's all talk about who we're voting for. Let's all strategizing. I mean,
because there was no such thing.
Also, this also goes to the whole idea that Richard was the only one who was really dealing in strategy. They were almost ashamed to vote people out. They felt bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of them didn't talk about what they wanted to do because they didn't want to do it in the first place.
Yeah, maybe once or twice you got somebody begging or trying to maybe when Colleen was her final last stand, you got her trying to talk to Sean to abandon his alphabetical voting and stuff like that. But yeah, you're right. Otherwise, there was no real discussion about it. Only other real discussion I can remember is when I believe Colleen and Kelly and Sean were battling it out in the water for who could outlast the other. And they were just like, hey, the loser goes.
Yeah, like Adam said, that you do kind of get some extra time, and the very odd Probst narration, which I don't think ever returns. So you got some extra time for just like camp life and the sorts of things they never concentrate on now because there was no strategy talk that normally takes up at least a portion of the episode.
No, and one of the things that's interesting about Probst's role here is that it's much more of a buddy to all the competitors. He is not at the challenges hectoring people about how they need to try harder. He's encouraging them all to do well.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point, he's rock and roll Jeopardy Jeff Probst, right? I mean, I don't think he's a producer or anything. He's just the guy with the slick hair and the blue shirt. So some things haven't changed.
All right, let's get to some questions. First of all, and I'll let you start, Adam, what was the biggest highlight of the season for you?
I mean, the whole season is a highlight. With this particular season, it's hard to pick out one thing. I mean, I would say that the final immunity challenge but really just the whole concept of starting from Probst's initial narration, 16 Americans, about to be marooned, like everything about the show is a moment. And I think to just pick out one or two things is a bit unfair. I for this season, I can't do it.
All right, Andy, what about you?
Probst reading the final vote, which they did on the island. They didn't have to wait and bring it back. They did it all there. But yeah, Survivor became Survivor when Richard Hatch wins at the very end. Or I guess a few minutes before that when there was a speech that people liked.
The snakes and the rats.
I had agreed with Adam's original answer, which was Richard intentionally giving up at the final challenge because he just assumed that either person, it would be in their best interest to take him to the end. That was fascinating because I remember thinking at the time, like, wow, what an idiot. Why would you just give up? You can guarantee yourself a 50-50 shot at the end. And then he's sitting out and the challenge is going on. And I'm like, you know what? It does kind of make sense. They probably both would take him. And then it turns out at least one of them really would take him to the end.
That was the best strategic move for sure. And when I was watching, it was more like, oh, that arrogant villain, he's done it again. Oh, he's putting it all on poor Rudy. But yeah, as it goes on, not only is it, oh, that wasn't so bad. Then you got to realize, and I probably didn't realize until after the show, and I spent all night processing it, which I did, and probably some of the next day, that it was beyond. It wasn't just a great calculated risk. He needed to do that to win. He needed Rudy on the jury, and he couldn't put him there. Right. It was just a brilliant calculation, and once I started to figure that out, that's when the pain of Richard losing started going away, and the admiration grew a bit more.
Yeah. If Richard puts Rudy on the jury, it's 4-3 the other way.
Or more, maybe. Because maybe Rudy, the lovable scamp, is able to turn more people against Hatch in the interim.
Yeah, because now Richard becomes someone who broke a promise by not bringing Rudy with him to the finals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The only way Richard wins is if somebody brings him to the finals, and especially if Kelly brings him to the finals.
Yeah. Yep. And then Rudy is there to cast the winning vote for him.
And so I imagine we're all going to answer the same on this, but who was the defining player of the season, whether that person won or not?
Richard Hatch might be the defining player in the history of Survivor. Literally, he defined Survivor.
Yes. I was going to say, this is the most literal definition. I think it's pretty clearly Richard Hatch, and I'm assuming it's unanimous, Adam?
Absolutely.
Okay. The third question we always ask is, how well did the season's twist or gimmick work? The game itself was the gimmick this time, so I'm going to say flawlessly.
Yes, casting 16 people on an island and creating a new blah, 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 blah. And what's also interesting is that they form so many gimmicks here, so many fake rituals that have artifice that should be laughable, right? People like us who spend time on the internet should just laugh at it, and sometimes we do with your parade of losers and that sort of thing. They've gone away, but a lot of it, the ritual helps the show in the sense that, in the same way that it helps prop up churches and stuff. But I'm controversial.
But one ritual Survivor that started with this season has carried on for way too many seasons thereafter. Only casting African Americans who can't swim.
Well, that's a trope, and that's bad. But lighting the torches, and fire represents life, and in the first season it was you've been voted out of, you're off the island. Was it voted off the island? I can't remember.
No, he said the tribe has spoken.
Tribe has spoken is another one. Well, I remember there was a hook about the island, because once it became Australia, it's what did they do? It's an island, but it's more than that.
Yeah.
But all of those things, decorating yourself in war paint, immunity idols, these things are kind of ridiculous, right? But
very much so.
It built a structure that they can replicate, and anytime, even in bad seasons, they can lean on that, and that gives viewers comfort, which is important because, for the most part, the cast of characters changes every time, so there's those constants. So all the gimmicks, everything about it was gimmicks, and it's kind of hard to believe that so many of them have lasted.
Well, it's funny.
Email.
Yes, tree mail.
Tree mail, which is another thing that
rewards, even though they were terrible.
Oh, the soggy pizza, my favorite reward ever. Didn't they have a Snickers bar as a reward too? Single Snickers bar.
I believe that sounds about familiar, unless somebody just snuck it in. That would be the next.
No, that was Kel. All right, so final question. What was the biggest flaw of the season? Andy, go ahead and start us off.
I mean, it's by judging it by standards that it doesn't have, but yeah, Adam already said it. One person came to play this game, and everybody else came to play or be on a different game. And that's what makes it impossible or near impossible to compare to others. So it's kind of a flaw, but at the same time, it's kind of what makes this season unique.
I would only go beyond that. I agree with all of that to say that not only was Hatch the only one who knew how to play the game, he was really the one who best understood how to do narration, how to talk to the camera about his strategy and about how he was approaching each day in a way that others didn't. He wasn't just the strategic force behind the show. He was the second narrator of the show next to Probst.
Yeah, whereas others treated the cameras almost like an annoyance. Greg especially.
I was going to say two in particular, Colleen and Greg.
And it's like, sorry, it's a necessary element of being on a TV show is being on a TV show. Right. But at the same time, you can understand, right? That we hadn't built a reality TV show culture yet. Like, in subsequent seasons, even the very next seasons, people not only were expecting that they were hoping for that level of attention. But again, it's just also kind of what makes this season a unique little thing.
The fault in this season was, what seems to be pretty credible allegations of the producer's role in manipulating the outcome.
Yeah.
Keeping Rudy in there, knocking out Stacey Stillman, who, has never been, I don't know if she's ever been afforded another chance on the show. She obviously hasn't taken it. But that was an injustice, and we can't let it go unremarked upon.
Yeah, they're never going to bring her back. I mean, even if everybody's like, "Oh, no harm, no foul," you were right to sue us or anything. To bring her back would be to promote the time that the show probably may or may not have tried to corrupt the results, because nobody else other than fans who know she's the woman that sued them would know who she is.
I Googled like mad trying to find anything about a settlement from that case and could not. So I assume that it's heavily non-disclosed, or it must not. It must have been settled in some way, because I couldn't find any record of it actually going through.
Is it another potential negative that Survivor created the reality TV boom that otherwise, other than Survivor, kind of sucks? Is that a problem? It's like it gave us this great thing, but then it was like a monkey's paw and all the bad things that came with it.
And now we have Utopia. And let's go ahead and crap on every reality show. Bachelor in Paradise or something. I don't know. I don't watch any other shows.
But you know what? If it wasn't this, it'd be something else. I mean, Joe Millionaire got a lot of viewers, too.
All right. So let's move on. We got the very first All-Star season to discuss. And another one that I was anxious to get to, because I feel like my opinion's starting to change on this. Number 5 on your list, All-Stars, our first ever returnee player season. Adam, tell us why you like this season.
I mean, I like this season because at that point, we were all hungering to see all these people again and to see how they do together the best of the best. And there are some people who we couldn't understand why in hell that they were cast for this season. The final 2 competitors being among them.
I was just going to say that.
I think those are the 2, basically. The other ones, there's maybe a couple others, but it's like, well, they're the representative of their season. But yeah, these were the 2 that are kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, both of them were fairly forgettable in their own season. Had we known that one of the first things that would happen is that every former winner would get voted out pretty quickly, we may have been less excited about it coming into it, but my God, just to see them all together in one place and to see what would happen, the anticipation was tremendous. And what you got out of it was a very high level of strategy and backstabbing going on, obviously, which played into stuff that was both happening within the game and before the game. You had an honest-to-God and sustainable Survivor romance. You also had some really ugly interpersonal stuff that was both upsetting to watch and upsetting to see how the show handled.
Particularly if, like me, you go back and review it just to see, how it's aged, what you remembered versus what actually happened. it's pretty uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah, I mean, you have Richard Hatch running around naked during an immunity challenge, rubbing himself into Sue Hall, who did not want it.
And he specifically, it's very clear rewatching it that he is intentionally rubbing himself on her. He even says something along the lines of, "Come here, you want some of this?" And it's kind of like, ooh, that's really makes you feel like you need a shower afterwards.
Yeah, it was ugly to watch. It was bad to watch thereafter because not only was Jeff Probst insensitive towards it, but most of the other competitors were as well. They just didn't get it. And I think that there were class issues involved in terms of Sue not being taken seriously when she was complaining about it. It just, it really, one of the worst things that's happened during the show, up there with, some of the people who were not really stable enough and centered enough to be on the show, being exploited on the show and doing ugly things during the process. I mean, this has got to be in the bottom 5 of all the things that have happened in all the seasons of Survivor.
Well, and you mentioned Probst's reaction. His actual reaction is, "Oh, come on, we don't need that out here." And that's it. That's all that happens. Everybody just keeps going on, finishing the challenge. And then it's addressed. I think it's in the next episode, because I was only watching highlights. But in the next episode, he says, "Hey, before we start this challenge, let's talk about what happened yesterday." Presumably, he'd gotten word from, the crew that Sue was really bothered by this. And so, again, he's fairly dismissive. He's like, "I couldn't really see it. What exactly happened?" And Sue is just, screaming, and she's crying, and she's calling out Jeff for not doing anything about it. It's really like pretty intense stuff. And then everybody around is just going like, "What is happening right now?" Really awkward.
It's really awkward. I mean, it happens at a reward challenge. Yeah, and remember, this is now at this point, Richard's out of the show.
But he got voted out that night for other reasons.
But she is so wounded by this that she doesn't want to continue. And then Probst is like, "Hey guys, you want to do a reward challenge anyway?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, you want to leave? We'll just go ahead and get you a boat." And then they say, "Here's a boat," and he gives her a hug, and they throw her on the boat, and they're like, "All right, moving on. What are we doing next?"
Yeah, I seem to remember, and you've seen it more recently than I have, that Kathy in particular was cold and dismissive towards her.
Sheehan, I remember in particular, she is the most comforting towards her. She's like, I'm so sorry. I couldn't see from my angle what was happening. I'm really sorry that you feel this way, that this happened to you, blah, 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 and is really comforting her. I don't recall Kathy being dismissive or not. I think in general, most of her tribe was kind of like, "Oh, shrug it off, suck it up."
Well, Kathy wasn't on her tribe. Kathy was on the other tribe, but yeah.
Well, I think Colby comes out and says something about, "Oh, yeah, Rich is just a naked guy who's annoying to be around. That's just how he is," as if that was the issue.
Yeah. Well, I think what happened, and you got the worst aspect of the show mixed in with the why the season is good. You mixed it out, but yeah, that was my pick. Obviously, it's not only the worst episode in this season; it's probably the worst thing that ever happened in Survivor. It's the thing, and it's nice that we're talking about them back to back. Because as much as people want to lionize Richard for what he did the first season in launching Survivor, and we just did that, the man sexually assaulted somebody in his second turn. So, there's people that really want to come back, and I'm like, I'm not so sure. But I think it's because of their dynamic. It was because it was Rich and Sue, and they were partners. People thought they were kidding around in a way that some people do. So I understand when people were reacting to it at the time. It was just like... It was an escalation of dares. Susan was like, "I'm just going to get past this guy." And that's why Probst might have reacted the way he did, because by all indications, the All-Stars gave him so much grief from a shooting perspective. all of those, rituals and things that they do that we talked about before, everybody'd been through that. They'd seen the song and dance, and they weren't really having it. They would talk amongst themselves when he's setting things up. They would like, "Okay, yeah, we'll get for the shot when you need it." So I think that's what he was dealing with. And because it was out on the challenge course, I'm willing to give a lot of the others some benefit of the doubt that they didn't have the right vantage point. But it was bad. It was bad in a way that we just don't like to talk about because it bums us out. I remember Rob actually being fairly sensitive to it after the fact, like in an interview. Or no, I think it was a discussion with Amber. Like, and she seemed okay with it at the time, but once you process it, I get it a bit more. Which actually surprised me because I was still thinking of him as, jackass Marquesas Rob.
I mean, look, the Jeff Probst who led a sensitive and honest discussion of race.
That's right.
Many seasons later was not in evidence here.
No.
He just wasn't. And you fault him. You have to fault the producers for not getting it. And for choosing to deal with Sue's feelings by exploiting her publicly like that.
And full disclosure, as Andy mentioned, when I was watching it at the time, obviously I was much younger, I was under the impression, oh yeah, they're buddies, they're just goofing around, that's a, silly thing they were doing. And it wasn't until, years later, when I went back and watched it, I think my wife and I watched it probably 2 years ago. And then, like I said, I reviewed it before we recorded this. It's a whole different perspective now versus then.
Yeah, and the world's a different perspective. We have a much better understanding now than we did in 2004 of what's right and what's wrong. When I was watching it as it was happening, I was definitely like, oh, there's Rich and Sue. I guess, she's okay with it.
Those kooky kids with their rubbing against each other. But the next
episode, when she wasn't okay with it, then, I was already turned around. Like, oh, yeah, okay. So if she's not okay with it, then she's not okay with it. Because you're allowed to be that way.
Yes.
You should
You can make that decision.
Yes. And you can process information different ways, and you can act tough in a certain scenario and then process it later. Do we still want to talk about this show called Survivor? And I would say if that is why people rank this season so low, then I'm not going to disagree with them. But I do think people knock this season for other reasons. And I'm interested if you guys feel that way. I'm guessing Adam doesn't because he ranked it fifth.
I might have some other reasons for you.
Yeah, John.
Well, we'll get to them. But like I said, my very meager list of notes, the first time that we ever had 18 players was in All-Stars. Up until then, we'd been at 16. And confirmed by Mark Burnett, both Elizabeth Hasselbeck and Colleen from Borneo were made formal offers to return. He actually said formal offers. I assume that's some sort of rose ceremony or something, but they both refused. So
that's
the extent of my notes. Yeah, exactly. That's how we end up with Amber. And I believe Rob is there mostly because Brian from Thailand was not there.
That does seem to be the scuttlebutt, yes.
Yes, it seems the most likely outcome. So the two people that are essentially subs go on to finish 1 and 2 in this season.
And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think what people knock about this show is a lot of their favorite survivors didn't come out looking so great in this one. It was a lot of ego on display there. And thus, the two people that came in with the least amount of prestige were probably underestimated to begin the show. As Adam pointed out, they targeted winners early on. That was also just kind of a strategy of perhaps the third least likely person to be cast, Jenna Lewis, when she looked at her tribe and is like, well, I don't want them to vote for me, so let me concoct this reasoning that 2 other people or 3 other people would agree with.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the pre-merge booths. Tina, former winner. Rudy, same tribe and not holding his own. Jenna left voluntarily when she, received news of how her mother was doing. Rob Sesternino kicked out because he was seen as a strategic threat.
The greatest player to never win, as titled by Jeff Probst.
And then
I'd have to think about that.
No, it's just that's how Jeff Probst was hyping
claims.
him after his season. So yeah, it makes sense that he was targeted for that reason.
That Richard, former winner, Sue leaves voluntarily. Colby, all but a former winner.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ethan. I mean, they took out a lot of fan favorites and strategic threats early, and it left this other tier of people.
It was the rise of the mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, you tell a Survivor fan coming into the season, Colby's not going to make it to the merge, Ethan's not going to make it to the merge, Rob C's not going to make it to the merge. but Kathy will, Alicia will, Sheann will, and Farmer Tom will.
Plus,
and Jenna
Lewis, and yeah.
Jenna Lewis is going to make it to final immunity.
And they're like, well, how's Rupert going to do? Yeah, and I think the other reason why people don't like it is all the stuff we've subsequently learned, right? About how much personal relationships were traded on. And obviously we got a taste of that with Rob's play to Lex. But it's like, oh yeah, there was pre-merge alliances, and these people were friends, and it broke up their friendship. And to my point to that, it's like, I don't effing care. For me, on this side of the screen, it's still an effing TV show. And if these guys' little friendships and all that, broke apart, whatever, grow up. And that's what's nice about later ones, is that people kind of got it. These people didn't know. They'd been living in a bubble where they were the most famous person amongst our group of friends. Unless, I guess, if you're Boston Rob and your groups of friends includes other survivors that are more famous than you. And it was fascinating to see that in play. As Adam said, it was great to see these people again, because up until that point, we were operating in a universe where we watch them every week, we develop attachments, and we cheer for them, and then they're just gone. Especially because this is a different internet world. So they're not on Twitter, they're not on podcasts. Getting them again was nice. Getting to see them again play was nice. And sure, the people I was cheering for going in didn't do well, but wah! It's like, do you stop watching football as soon as your team gets knocked out? I guess some people do.
Yes.
I'm a Vikings fan, so I just have to stop watching football. Other people rose and took their place, and they were actually more interesting and better at Survivor than a lot of those people we lost.
Yeah, Rob Mariano was a very good Survivor player.
Yep.
He played a great game against other people who all knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and he dominated them the way he dominated those people in Redemption Island.
Yes, he did.
They voted him most trustworthy. They voted him the person they would most want to team up with, while he was betraying every single one of them. Like, they literally did not vote the way he wanted him to when they were on a different tribe. Like, so, and those were all very exciting.
Many people in that show thought that they were going to be the third person brought to final immunity with him and Amber.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much every single one of them, possibly including Rob Cesternino. Apparently Lex and Kathy as well. And here's the other thing about everybody whining that this show is so prevalent on pregame alliances. Apparently it wasn't, because all those people who got butthurt at the final tribal council was because their pregame alliance didn't pan out, Lex and Kathy thought that they were going to back up with Big Tom and Boston Rob and run the show on that side. But guess who voted against you, Lex? Big Tom. Like, he wouldn't seem all that into that plan. He seemed less into the plan than Boston Rob did.
And let's be clear, that pair of episodes in the middle where Amber's the only one who switches tribes and Rob is able to convince Lex to protect her. And then the next episode where they have the merge, turn around and vote out Lex. That is a great pair of Survivor episodes.
Yes, it is. Very much the penalty for being nice there for Lex.
Yeah, but you know what? Lex can sell that all he want. He did that move, voting out Jerry instead of Amber, to save his own neck. They were going to go into the merge down numbers. This was a way of trying to curry favor with the power player on the other side. Much like JT giving an idol to Russell. Lex was doing it for strategic purposes as much as he was doing it for personal purposes, and I'll totally cop. Sounds like they were very good friends, and Lex helped Boston Rob get through a bad breakup with Kelly from Africa or whatever. But he still
know these things.
I don't know. I don't know how these things enter my consciousness, but once apparently they're trapped. But yeah, like, they showed the conversation between he and Kathy. It's like, if we get rid of Amber, Boston Rob will get scared. And yeah, everybody was scared of the Rob father on the other tribe. They did it for strategic purposes, and you could argue that it might have been their best bet. It just didn't work. Boo-hoo, you lost a game, Lex.
Regardless of all this, I'm skipping ahead to the biggest flaw of the season.
Besides the sexual assault of one of the players on camera.
Obviously excluded.
Okay.
The pregame alliances are still it for me. It ruined it for me in my expectations of the season. Like you said, it was so exciting to be able to see these people play again. You loved them from their seasons. Well, most of them from their seasons. And then just to find out that it's basically they had tried their best as players to rig it beforehand, and nothing was coming up organically, which makes total sense. But at the time, as a doe-eyed viewer watching this, like, oh, this is going to be amazing. It was just very disappointing to realize what was happening behind the scenes. And like you said, we got a little taste of that when we actually heard about Rob and Lex's deal. That was clearly trading on a friendship that they had formed outside of the game.
Right. But as much as that pregame alliance existed, it didn't help Lex out. So it's like, people can talk about these pregame alliances, but it kind of didn't. Once they got on that island and a certain amount of time passed, it didn't really matter that much. Like, Rob and Amber did not have a pregame alliance.
Yeah, they didn't count on love.
That's right.
Aww.
Love can conquer all things. Whether it's second car giveaways or...
Love is the strongest alliance.
It was hoes before bros. But yeah, so,
the rare instance where that occurs.
But I was a huge fan of this season, and I think I still am to a degree. Like, this is the end of the first era of Survivor, and it ended that not only by bringing all these people back, but it marked a higher level of gameplay. Maybe it was tough for a lot of the people that were on this season, and some of those people have come back and shown that it's still tough. They just don't grasp this thing we call Survivor anymore. But subsequent seasons, they did. They saw the moves that Rob made. They saw the moves that Lex made before Rob voted him out. And it was just like, okay, it's not show friends, it's show business.
Ooh. Wow. Anyway, biggest flaws of the season from you, gentlemen.
I mean, other than the sexual assault?
Yes. Clearly excluding. I need to amend that question, apparently. It is flaw. You know what? I have to amend that question for sure because we'll have to use it again later.
Well, that might be my answer for that season, too.
Yes. Okay. So, anyway, other than the sexual assault, Adam, what was your biggest flaw with this season?
I think relatively weak casting of the women on this season, although based on the show that hasn't always done a great job of casting women in the first place.
Well, would it have improved your assessment of the cast if they had gotten Elizabeth and Colleen?
I don't know if it's Elizabeth and Colleen as much as the women play strong strategic games or were real immunity threats, which Cheyenne wasn't, Alicia wasn't, Kathy really wasn't.
So if they brought back Kelly or...
Yeah, Kelly as opposed to Jenna.
Maybe Tammy from Marquesas.
I assume they might have reached out to Kelly because I feel like she was probably popular enough that, although, you know what, at that point they would have had the final four from
Borneo.
Yeah,
the other three were already on lock, and then it was trying to get Colleen as well.
Yeah, so it would almost be Borneo Part 2.
But it's interesting, it's like they weren't having fun. I mean, this really was a season where they were out there to play a game and to knock each other out. They weren't out there to have fun. And I'm assuming someone needs to say this at one point during every podcast. With the exception of the Rob Amber, romance, no one was there to make friends.
Ooh, well done.
Rupert might have been there to make friends. See, for me, that's a plus. That's why I hold All Stars in high regard. Because again, I don't care if this broke up their stupid little reality show friendships. I don't care if, Tina goes all crying because she doesn't get to win in a second $1 million. And also she was on a sucky tribe that lost a lot, so it's just going to happen. Somebody has to get voted out. I like that they came to play. I like that my favorite player going in, Rob C., was just blindsided because that shows that people were there to play. Unfortunately, it was Boston Rob for some people. But for me, that was a big plus. Not going in, I thought he was just the bratty Rob father from Marquesas, but he won me over from his ability to play a game in a way that I had been waiting for people to play this game.
I mean, it was ruthless.
Yeah.
And he didn't win the game, but he dominated it to an incredible extent.
And every confessional that we get from him is just oozing with cocky villain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all, they're all playing right into my hands. They're doing exactly what I'm telling them to do. And, Rupert's going to catch me fish until I vote him off this island.
Except for, when he's mooning over Amber. I miss my girl.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah. I'm okay rooting for the villain if the villain is playing Survivor better than other people. And I get that other people aren't, and that's fine. You can
And
enjoy it in
if
other
the
ways.
And if the villain is only villainous within sort of his gameplay and isn't also a bad person on top,
Exactly.
Yeah, he's not being a jerk. Now, Rob did obviously go into that territory too. It was an unnecessary low blow of insulting Tom's dumb kid, but
Oh,
I just had
insult to injury.
But yeah, other than that, his terrible moves were beating people in a game.
Yeah,
Bad, so sad. So my answer to John's question of, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Was that they gave Rupert $1 million.
Oh God, you're right. He was the fan favorite, though, Andy.
Yeah, so this is the first time you missed this in your little trivia. It's the first time they did the fan favorite award, and then they gave him the exact same award that Amber got for lasting 39 days and convincing a jury to vote for her. And that is a colossal mistake that luckily they never did again. Then it was reduced to, I don't know, 10 grand or 100 grand maybe.
100.
That's fine. If you have a sponsor, you want to do this little thing, and there are certainly fans that like to cheer for their favorites, you can throw them that bone. But if they had continued that, even if they had just continued it with future returnee seasons, then you get two different games. You get the person trying to win Survivor and the person trying to win the fans. And winning the fans might be easier. You certainly don't have to be out there as long. There's been some players that were voted out a couple episodes before the end. Typically, you have to last a little while to win that award, but $1 million for finishing fourth is a tough one to swallow.
Oh, you could have had people saying, "I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make fans." How good would that have been? All right, let's move on. So what was the biggest highlight of the season? Go ahead, Andy.
It was Boston Rob pulling Lex aside and saying, "Hey, protect my girl and I'll take care of you." It hadn't happened before, or possibly ever since, where somebody was able to affect the vote of the other side.
Adam, you agree?
That was the highlight of the season. But I'd have to say, that last day with just Rob and Amber lying on the beach comfortably and like seeing that was genuine was really kind of sweet and not something that we've gotten out of Survivor since.
You're such a romantic.
I still believe in love.
Unlike Andy and I, who are jaded robots.
No, when it comes to Romber, I love those.
I was going to say,
I watched their wedding special. I actually did. Now, my wife really wanted to, and they were amazing on The Amazing Race, so that followed right up that. Yeah.
They were a lot of fun on The Amazing Race. It's a shame we never got to see Tontine.
Probably not, though. I bet it was awful. John?
Highlight? For me, the biggest highlight was just that we got to see these players again. Because like you said, it was never a given that we were going to. It just seemed like, they were gone from our lives. Like you said, there's no podcasts or real internet way to follow up on these people and see them again. So having them back on the show was really exciting.
Yeah, from this point on, Survivor is no longer tabula rasa. It now allowed itself to have some institutional memory. And I think that's led to some bad moments, right? Over-reliance. But it's also led to some great ones, including what most people think is the best season of all time.
Yeah, I mean, look, part of what's interesting about the show, just building off of that, is that in this season, people are listed on the Chiron based on what prior season they were on. It's not based on where you're from. It's not based on your occupation. What matters is where you were on Survivor before.
Yep. So who was the defining player of this season, Adam?
I believe it would be a young man named Rob Mariano from Massachusetts. He's a contractor or works in construction.
Never heard of him. Andy, who would you pick?
I was going to go with Amber Burkage, the plucky other hot chick that appeared on the cover of Maxim's other magazine once. No, it's Rob. Rob is the other defining player in the history of Survivor.
I went with Jenna Lewis because she starts the season out with the Let's Vote Out the Winners plan, and it just leads the whole charge of bringing all these outside forces into the game and just lift the mediocre players up. And yeah, to me, I'm calling this season relatively mediocre, and I know Andy disagrees with me, but Jenna Lewis defines the season for me because she was leading the charge of the mediocre, although I do give Rob plenty of props for his gameplay in this season.
But was she? I mean, she voted out the two oldest people in her tribe. Ooh, what original strategy that is.
I think the voting out the winners thing, it wasn't just within her tribe. Other tribes started to catch that. And I think people noticed on the other tribe, like, oh, wow, the winners are going. And then
I think that's been overblown, though. 2 winners were voted out. That's it.
Tina and Richard.
I guess 3. Tina, Richard, Ethan. But Ethan was like right before the merge. Jenna quit, and she wasn't in danger of being voted out. Jenna did what players on the bottom do. She did what Chris Daughtry did. You know, they're going to try to vote me out. I'm going to come up with a reason to vote somebody else out instead of me. Because, yes, if Jenna Lewis doesn't come up with a plan of let's vote out winners because they don't deserve to win, who do you think they're voting out?
Exactly.
It's probably
so
Jenna
that's why
Lewis.
she's
the defining player.
That's why she's my defining player.
One other thing about Jenna Lewis, we should have talked about this during Borneo. There was a heartbreaking moment during that season where they had the letters from home, only it turned out her family forgot to send one in.
And she just starts bawling.
She just started bawling. And again, this is when, sort of missing your family was at the heart of what the show was trying to talk about.
Yeah.
That's the moment that brought her back for All-Stars, I bet. Other than Colleen saying no.
That and Elizabeth saying no were big factors. All right, so last but not least, how well did the season's twist or gimmick work? And I guess we're calling All-Star as the only gimmick here.
Well, that is the gimmick. Returning players. And
the gimmick, yeah.
And 3 tribes instead of 2.
That's true. So how well did the All-Stars gimmick work for you, Adam? Well, clearly fairly well, since you got it number 5.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the role of pre-show alliances and alleged alliances played into it in ways that we didn't quite understand at the time, but we wanted to see these people again, and I'm glad that we did.
Andy?
I basically view non-All-Star seasons as the minor leagues for All-Star seasons, so I'm in favor of the seasoning.
Unanimous, because I said the All-Stars gimmick was fantastic. Whether the execution was flawless or not, the idea was flawless. All right, let's move on, because we have 2 more seasons to cover, and we're already running long here. So Guatemala was the next season that we have to discuss with Adam here. Some quick notes about Guatemala, and once again, how do I not have it written down where he had this ranked?
Well, he didn't put numbers by it, but I think it was 6, 7, 8, 9. He had it 10.
It was definitely in my top 10.
I was going to say, this was a top 10 season. I remember that. I do remember where the last season fell for him, but we'll get to that in a minute. So Guatemala was the first time that we had returnees in a season mixed with new players. They supposedly also considered bringing back the 2 people who got screwed over at the beginning of Survivor Palau by not getting to play at all. Instead, they brought back Bobby, John, and Stephanie, the 2 least sucky of the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked from Palau. And this is our first ever season with no African Americans, which I went and looked at the cast photo and I was like, oh yeah. And last but certainly not least, first ever season with an immunity idol. And it had to be played before the votes were cast, which seems ridiculous in hindsight.
But it actually saved somebody, unlike the modern idols. So.
Yes. And we'll get to that, I am assuming, at some point in this discussion. So, Adam, tell us why it's in your top 10.
It's in my top 10 because I think the second half of this show is really good. You have just some really strong and interesting players throughout this season. Judd, who was he was the 1.0 of Tony. He's sort of the really loud and boorish New York area guy who thinks he's running the show. You have Stephanie returning from the season before, who's both a physical threat and a relatively good strategic player. You have Rafe, who was sort of a proto-Cochran. Danny Boatwright, who won the season, who was both a good physical and strategic threat. And then, my goodness, you have people like, you have a former NFL quarterback trying to claim he's not a former NFL quarterback.
He's a landscaper.
You've got an honest-to-God fishmonger on the show.
You were so excited to talk about the fishmonger.
What is a fishmonger? It's a word I've heard for many years in my life, obviously many times in this season.
Isn't it the person that throws the fish and then cuts the heads off?
Is that it?
Yeah, a monger is someone who gathers and cultivates.
So it's like a farmer of fish?
Kind of.
I bet she's a fish farmer, but the show couldn't resist calling her fishmonger, and they were right. to do that.
Because it's still confusing us all these years later. Three grown men cannot agree on a definition.
And look, this was just a really enjoyable season right after another fantastic season. I mean, I think Palau was, other than Borneo, my top ranked of any season not involving returning players.
It was.
I just have fond memories of this season. Danny's play in particular. I mean, this is a season also that started off with an 11-mile hike. Like, just this absolutely grueling, find your way to camp thing, which is another thing that sort of the show has largely ditched over the years.
Probably because it nearly destroyed this cast.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. But I like the fact that it nearly destroyed this cast, and that this was a season where the elements kind of mattered, where, being tired and having to figure out how to survive was still a factor on the show. And in the end, what you have is, like Chris Daughtry, you have someone coming in from outside the main alliance and finding a way to enter, subvert it, and win. And that's just great television.
It was. So what was the biggest highlight of the season for you then?
Biggest highlight of the season was the episode in which Danny both won the clue, the magical clue at the Survivor auction, won the immunity challenge, and then proceeded to, even after winning immunity, not just being satisfied with herself surviving, flip the game over and get Judd kicked out. Judd, who was in many ways the dominant strategic player and dominant narrator of the season, leading to one of the best "I can't believe you a-holes kicked me out" speeches of anyone in show history.
Judd's blind side is, that's what I picked as my highlight of the season.
Yeah.
It is beautiful editing. They got the perfect quotes from Judd about how you shouldn't take it personally, just shut up and take your punishment when you're getting voted out. Then it's him, and he's like, I hope you get eaten by a crocodile, you bunch of scumbags. Oh, it's perfect. So beautifully done.
Yeah, I agree. Adam put it well. The other parts of the episode were really great. It was one of Danny's best moves. And to her credit, was one of the first people that realized that you need to hold out in the auction to, for game advantages. Maybe it was the first advantage, so I don't know if other people had time. But she was there to play, and she did it.
First advantage.
But just Judd getting voted out is enough for me. He's become kind of a lovable, villain type for some people, because some people prefer a little more bombast in their reality TV show personalities. I thought he was a really bad person after a while. Maybe it's because, the initial hike trashed him, but the way that he went off on Margaret several tribal councils before is really uncomfortable. In a physically threatening somebody type uncomfortable. When he was all going, I'm not a bad sportsmanship. That's not bad sportsmanship. And it's funny because he talked funny, but there was a hint of violence behind the way he was domineering her, not just in that tribal council, but earlier, in camp. So to see him get his, when he was super confident, he had just finally gotten rid of Gary before, who had gotten a little bit of comeuppance on him in the, when he was able to follow Judd and use his idol in the weakest way to do an idol. But yeah, seeing Judd go
moment for me, by the way.
Yeah, seeing Judd go was very satisfying.
Well, you were alluding to it there, so I'll clarify what it was. Judd has the clue to the idol, but he tells the whole tribe the exact opposite of what the clue says. He's, look on the ground or whatever, and it's up in the air or something like that. So Gary sees that Judd is doing the exact opposite of what he just told them and realizes, oh yeah, okay, Judd just lied to us. And then Gary ends up finding the idol before Judd just by seeing what Judd was doing.
Yeah, it saves himself from one vote, but it doesn't matter. They just vote out his other alliance mate, Jamie. But yeah, so yes, seeing Judd go was really satisfying for me because I did not find him adorable. I found him to be a bully, and I like it when Survivor bullies get theirs.
And beyond him, there were a lot of just likable people in the season that You were hoping that someone would get past this guy.
Yeah.
Bobby John was likable. Some of them didn't make it past him, but some of them did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Margaret seemed like a nice lady. One person that's never talked about because he was pre-merged, but Brian Corridan was like a really great Survivor character and a really great Survivor fan. But that actually kind of mixes in with the season itself to kind of go off the questions. But why is this the forgotten season of Survivor? It's like the only person that's ever come back is Stephanie, who was previously on. Other than that, right. It's just like not mentioned. And a couple podcasts back, I was refuting the claim that Chris Daughtry is a living legend by questioning what did he do that makes him so great and Danny didn't. And I think some people have misinterpreted that and saying that Danny also sucks, but it's more that people love Chris, or I should say a certain subset of people love Chris, but there's no big groundswell for Danny Boatwright. And for my mind, she did Chris Daughtry's play better.
Yeah, she had roughly similar circumstances, the exact same outcome, and I would lump them right together.
Yeah, she got that idol and got rid of Judd. She was able to flip it, win a couple more, but then she was able to get them to vote out somebody even when she wasn't immune. She was able to get Rafe to agree that she didn't have to take him. Rafe would have won if she didn't. Rafe was well-liked, and Rafe was a good player. Another player that's been unfairly, forgotten. But I think he's actually turned down invites to come back. And then she voted his ass out. But yeah, why doesn't this season get more credit? Is it just because it was the 11th season and people were just burned out a bit? Is it because people came into this season wanting more of their sweet America's sweetheart underdog Stephanie, and when instead she came to play and was maybe not so nice about being in a dominant position, suddenly she's a bitch, and it wasn't fun for them?
She came to play and sell some steak, Andy.
I think that was her third one where she tried to promote her. But yeah, do you have any answers?
I do think you're right. This is at the start of the period where longtime Survivor fans started to drop out a bit. You think about seasons like Cook Islands, Fiji, China, Micronesia. There was a down phase of sort of like too much of the same thing. Where look, there were great seasons in there and great players, but I think at a certain point people got tired of it. And I certainly took a break from the show for a while. I missed 3 or 4 seasons in the middle there before coming back around Samoa.
You and me both.
I do think that sort of post All Stars and post Vanuatu pull out, people may have started to get burnt out a bit.
So who's our defining player? I think this sort of will work into why this season is so forgotten. Because I went with Danny, but as Adam said, there was certainly other people on the cast that were likable, interesting. It's not a poorly cast season. But again, I guess I'm going with Danny as the defining player of the season just because of the underdog story. Would you guys agree with that?
I could see why you'd say that.
I would agree with that.
I think it's Stephanie. And I think that also might factor into why people don't view this season as fondly. They didn't get the Stephanie they wanted. And I think that it's all editing, right? The previous season we see her, she's on Oolong and she's losing all the time and thus looks like an underdog and seems more likable. Or this one, she's given agency right away. She's treated like a rock star by her tribe, and she's immediately one of the power players, and people don't like her that way. And I think the truth is in the middle. Because if you think back a bit and pull out, she wasn't always so nice to the other people. It's what made her a little less sucky than the rest of the people. Is that she was, because some of them really sucked, and she wasn't very interested in being along with that. This time now, she's a little more powerful. She's voting people out. She's teaming up with people like Judd because it is strategically sound for her to do so. Judd, when the swap happens, just immediately goes to them. I want to play with you guys and all that. And anybody smart would know this guy isn't going to win. So I thought she played actually a pretty good, game. but not socially. She pissed people off, and I think it pissed the fans off. And I remember the internet reaction to the point where Tom Westman shut it down. It's like, interesting how everybody loved Stephanie when she was losing. So I think that kind of defines it for me, is that, for one, she was, controlling as much as the action as she could. Danny obviously had to react to a lot of the action, and she did so admirably. And she didn't care that she wasn't playing the nice girl that everybody wanted her to be.
Adam, who's your defining player?
I think it's Stephanie for the same reasons. I mean, she was, as a returning player, she was going to be the narrative focus from the start, her and Bobby John. And that she was there until the end of the season meant that, it was her arc that you were following more than anyone else. She wasn't the best narrator, but I remember her as being interesting enough. But you're right, sort of how people viewed the season was through her. And she did define the season at least as much as its winner did.
Yeah, and maybe that makes it a prototype for other seasons that that we don't look too fondly on. When they bring back just 2 or 3 returnees, too much focus. And maybe that's why this cast doesn't get the credit it should, because Survivor leaned on the known and made this the Stephanie and somewhat Bobby John show. And it's interesting when you look at it that way, is that the one person that didn't really idolize Stephanie like the rest is Gary Hogaboom, because he's used to being around people that have been on television before.
Yep.
But I remember when it's really funny, because when they first introduced all of them but 2, and we brought back these 2 that you can use as tools, and it's like, haha, Probst is calling Stephanie and Bobby John tools, because and then Brian was all like, we got Stephanie, we can't lose, and it's like, clearly you weren't paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, you can't lose?
Yeah,
I think you added a word to that sentence.
Done a whole lot.
Okay, so how well did the season's twist or gimmick work? We'll just call the returnees and the idol the gimmicks, I suppose. The idol, I think
the idol's more just a little
really
thing. But yeah, bringing back...
Yeah, there's not really much to say about it, yeah.
This worked better than other seasons where they just brought back some to mix, because these 2 weren't dominant players. Stephanie was able to ascend pretty quickly, but I think that she also deserves some credit for that. Bobby John just assimilated and was just basically what he was before. But it wasn't, just Boss and Rob, with so much experience that the other people can't compete. Or even Coach, who's had enough time to course correct some of his problems. Or Ozzy, who's worshipped as he goes. At a certain point, they were just players, and Stephanie was in a good alliance.
I have to say, it was interesting to see these 2 brought back, because there was a sense, it's like, oh God, these poor people stuck in Tribe suck. I wonder what they would do if they were given another chance. And that's why I was also thrilled when they brought back Michael Skupin later on. Less interested in Penner and Swan, but the idea that some interesting people really did get screwed over by their circumstances on this show. Let's see what would happen if they got another chance.
And actually, I just said this might have been where it worked best, but no, Philippines is where it worked best. And for the same reason, they didn't bring back dominant players. They brought back people who, deserved a second shot, if you think that way.
Right. If you're going to do a small amount of returnees, it can't be the dominant power player types. It has to be the, middling also ran types who were, ruined by circumstances or whatever it might be. You can't bring in the Boston Rob type if you're going to have a minimal amount of returnees in a season. So agreed completely with you guys. Now let's talk biggest flaws of the season, because I'm just so lukewarm on this season. I can't find something that's really terrible about it. It's just pretty forgettable. And I went back and watched some clips of it, and I'm still like, oh yeah, I remember that, but didn't move me, didn't do much for me. What about you, Adam?
I'll give you one, because they had one episode post-merge where they used both of my least favorite kinds of challenges in the same episode. The reward challenge was trivia questions on Mayan culture.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was combined with the, get the question right, smash somebody else's thing. Yeah. Which I like. It's sort of like trivia about stuff that you had no reason to, no ability to learn while you were there and no reason to know before you got there is lame. And this is something that they have thankfully gotten rid of because it's some of the hokiest stuff that they do on the show. The Jeff Probst is going to read you a story.
Oh, God.
And it's going to be a long story. And then you're going to have to run to 7 different stations and answer a question about the story that you, as viewers, did not want to pay attention to.
Call back to the first season, which you've often said they should repeat the challenges of the first season. That's roughly one of the first season challenges.
But it only works when you tie it into the Blair Witch Project, right?
Exactly.
With Rudy staring into a camera.
I don't know.
Yeah, because they filmed that with the Blair Witch shaky cam, which was kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, Jeff telling stories about a Mayan goddess, that's not what they're there for. I mean, I am glad that over the past 5 to 10 years, they have evolved away from the role of brute physical strength towards puzzles and agility and balance and things that were more gender balanced. You know, because when you talk about Chris Daughtry's win and sort of what did Danny do that he didn't do or vice versa, you know, one of the things that he could do there was physically dominate, especially towards the end, to a degree that Danny never had those kind of inherent advantages. But yeah, those were among the lamer types of challenges we see on the show. I mean, yeah, there were no awful moments during the season, so it's a little bit harder to answer.
Andy, what about you?
I think this will tie into the last season we're going to talk about. A big portion of the season was dominated by the least likable people. For the middle, until Danny is able to flip it, it's Stephanie and Judd dictating the action. And they were edited, and they probably were, not so likable, you know? And that's not fun to tune into every week when people that are sneering at, you know, their competition are winning, and the people that are struggling up against it are losing. And I think maybe that's what turned the tide.
I can't believe you don't like Judd, you scumbag.
I really don't like Judd.
All right, let's move on to the final season we're going to discuss tonight. And this, I'm sure we'll get through nice and quickly. And a nice, fun, icky moment to talk about in this one, too. It's Thailand, which Adam had right at the bottom or next to last on his list.
You had Nicaragua last, like any right-thinking person, right?
I think he had Thailand last, yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
It might be our only person who had something below Nicaragua.
I mean, look, Nicaragua is awful. These are dumb people playing a bad game. You have quitting. I mean, there's nothing redeemable about Nicaragua.
Except apparently that it wasn't Thailand.
Yeah, I was going to say, there must be one thing.
Yeah, there was no sexual assault.
Okay, so there it is.
You could argue that there wasn't any in Thailand either. Let's just talk about this.
Yeah, before we get into such discussions, I want to mention that I took my daughter on a 2-hour trip to see Disney's Frozen on Ice. So if I say anything that's offensive to women, I get a free pass on this one.
I'm not sure that you do, so watch yourself.
I can't imagine that Frozen on Ice has as iconic a moment as during Toy Story on Ice, which I saw maybe 2 years ago, when they bring out Lotso Huggin' Bear, and the whole arena does indeed smell like strawberries.
Okay, so Adam and I both get a free pass if anything comes up.
Hey, I would have taken my sons to it, so that makes me even more elevated. But apparently things on ice just isn't that interesting to us here in Canada, because that was our trees yesterday. It's a little ambiguous whether Ted did the things that Gandia accuses him of, but either way, that's some hella uncomfortable television. You know, you basically get to choose. Either one guy assaulted a woman, or a woman decided to make it up as a strategic play. And those are symbolic elements of Thailand, which might be the worst collection of human beings in the history of Survivor. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Adam?
Yeah, or as the Wikipedia article so helpfully summarizes, at Chuigan, Gandhi accused Ted of grinding against her at night. Ted later approached Gandhi and explained that he mistook her for his wife.
That was an actual quote. he said that they were, he's explaining it because, Gandhi is freaking out and telling the rest of the tribe. And he's like, guys, calm down. Here's what happened. We were, snuggled up and I was tired and I mistook her for my wife. And I think he basically says that he grinded up on her. It's just a question of whether, yeah, exactly, whether he was actually asleep when it happened and he woke up and he realized what he was doing and he stopped. There was,
not to unduly put my lawyer hat on, but I'm going to say that grinding yourself up against another person, especially of the opposite sex, but really of anyone, that's a strict liability offense. It doesn't really matter what your intent was. You shouldn't be putting yourself in a position where that's possible with someone who does not want to be grinded against.
Yeah, and like I said, I think, and I'd have to go back and watch, but I think he cops to something. Whether he says that he was grinding on her or he rubbed up against her or something, I forget how he sort of diverts blame from himself. But
then he was also like, I'm not even attracted to her.
Way.
That was
yeah. He tries to smear the victim afterwards, which is fantastic.
It's a lovely thing to be talking about this week.
Oh, man.
We should have booked Adam a different week.
Yeah.
Although that story's not going anywhere, nor should it. And that's the nadir of still a lot of terrible people doing terrible things. This is the final group of, lovable characters such as Clay, Brian Heidick, Ted's up there, Jan. And the thing is, the other side kind of dicks too. To the point when Xi'an pseudo flips and does it, you're kind of like, yeah, go Xi'an, because those people are being jerks to you. Possibly racist. This is the season of Rob with two B's being a jackass. And yeah, it's the success and failure of Survivor seasons is often just a simple matter of casting. And in this season, they got casting very, very wrong.
I actually, for my biggest flaw of the season, I said the casting was so bad that the Ted and Gandia thing actually made it feel even more gross than rooting for the car salesman. There was some really bad casting. You already mentioned Rob and Clay. Just, whole lot of terrible people in this season.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. You think about the evolution of the show. You have the first season. You have Outback, where Colby and Jerry are such, big characters and, big and fun things happen all season long. Africa, which I'm not a huge fan of, overall, but for the first time you had, a truly likable hero win in Ethan, who sort of won clean.
Yeah.
Marquesas, it starts to fall downhill a bit, especially because of the incident which gave this podcast its name.
But you still had a very cute and fun underdog story that powered the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you still have likable people towards the end. Pascal and Malia, it's like, yeah, I hope one of these guys can win this. And, and someone who is, less well portrayed on the show ends up winning it. And then you hit Thailand and you're just like, oh my God, this show can suck sometimes.
Yep.
And it was a real gut punch.
Yeah, and it was just like going back every week to visit a bunch of people you can't stand to be around. Now, at that point, it's 5 seasons. I'm pretty hooked, and the show can recover, and it did very, very well with Amazon. But, if this had been the 11th season as opposed to Guatemala, we might not have Survivor anymore.
If this had been the first season, you're not getting a second season.
No. Yeah, exactly. This is Married by America, which was a show that I don't even think followed through to the second episode.
No, there was no second episode. That was you're talking about the Rick Rockwell thing, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, that was that's Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire. Man, Fox is great at this. But yeah, just a lot of awful people playing a game that makes people more awful. And we often like that, but, it has to feel like a game, not like it's just people being bad.
So this should be fun. What was the biggest highlight of the season for you, Andy?
Oh, frick. The Xi'an thing. Xi'an Brian very well talking to her, getting her to flip over when Probst is like, all right, you guys are all going to live here. And it looks like she's found a spot with people that respect her a bit more, unlike the other side who basically treated her like this, mystical oddity like you would in like an old movie set near the Orient. And then Probst going, who said anything about a merge? Which was obviously the biggest way they've screwed with the character up until then, but it was certainly a moment.
Yes, it was. Adam, is that going to be yours as well?
It was going to be mine as well. It's the only enjoyable, interesting moment in the season that I can remember. I have not gone back and watched it again.
Yeah, well, I can't believe that.
Who would do that to themselves?
I can't believe that you guys didn't pick mine, which was Rob chokeslamming Clay. The best part, though, is that he then complains that he's getting thrown out of the challenge. He's like, well, what did I do? And Probst is like, he can't even keep a straight face. He's trying to tell him, you're out because you grabbed Clay around the throat. He's like stuttering and stumbling over his words. And by the way, that challenge, that's probably the most poorly designed challenge until they get to Micronesia and have that death trap of a challenge with Chet and Joel that, several people got injured on. Like, that was a really dumb challenge, and it just led to so many people getting thrown out.
Yeah, it's just an example of sometimes the show can't think things through because they say, they test it. They've got their dream team. But you know what? Those dream team are just people going to work that day. They're not people competing for $1 million amongst the social pressures of if you do not do well, the people amongst you will kick you out. The only way they could kind of mimic those conditions is if the loser of the challenge gets fired from the dream team every week.
Ooh, stakes are high.
And
all
look,
right, so
we didn't understand at the time that you could just quit on a season, but don't worry, Survivor will be back in a couple months.
Yeah.
We kept watching it and hoping it would get better.
Yeah.
Because if we stopped watching it, maybe we wouldn't get any more Survivor.
Yeah. And that was at a time when the ratings were still massive, at least relative to what it is now.
Yeah.
So who was our defining player of the season? I have a feeling that I know what the answer is going to be, but Adam, who would you call the defining player?
The player who defined the season is the one who won it, Brian Heidick, who was Richard Hatch without the charm. And with really, he was cruel and unfunny. He was there to win a game, and there's a reason why, as far as I know, he has never been invited back. He just was not a likable guy, and that we had to see him and listen to him week after week after week was just a bad viewing experience. It was not entertaining.
Well, you'll like this. Was he the Marlowe to Richard Hatch's Avon?
Maybe.
Yes.
That's not a bad thought.
Oh, you really?
But yeah, he...
Not a bad thought.
It was a business trip for him, and he played it coolly and efficiently with no real worry about how this played for human emotions, except in how those human emotions would further him in the game. I do not like this season. I do not like Brian Heidick so much as a person. I think Brian Heidick is one of the 5 best players in the history of Survivor, and I voted for him last year in the Hall of Fame, and I might do so again this year. And it just shows that sometimes playing a great game of Survivor is hella boring.
I think that's been clearly demonstrated in several seasons we've discussed.
Yeah, you see it again in Redemption Island, except again, as to Adam's point, the charm brought back. But yeah, Boston Rob played a very Heideckian game. Both times, really. All-Stars and Redemption Island. Just, he's more entertaining, and people like him.
Yeah. His fellow castaways like him. More importantly, he works to make him likable to us.
Mm-hmm.
He's the lovable rogue. And so, yeah, look, I understand why with Redemption Island, people didn't enjoy watching him pitch a no-hitter because they thought it was against the AAA team. But he made it fun for me to watch it.
Yeah. Whereas Brian Heidick
did
not.
Yeah.
He should have gotten involved in a showmance. He could have hooked up with Xi'an and been like, Brian, to the Romber.
Yeah, but if he did that, it'd be like, what, American Psycho type relationship? He wouldn't actually be involved in it. It would just be another means to an end.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, it was just a lot of deplorable people on this season, and it feels really weird to be rooting for the really just sleazy kind of car salesman guy at the end. Like, yeah, he played
right?
the best game.
Like, were you cheering for Brian at the end?
I was.
Yeah, I was too, because it's just like, he's the best player.
Yeah.
I wasn't excited about it, but it was like, I mean, if I was like, based on who I like most, Helen seemed fine, but you just kind of had to tip your cap to Heidick and move on.
Yep, exactly.
And yet, he only won by 1 vote.
Yeah, against Clay, perhaps the greatest GOAT that has ever been. One of the few people we thought that could lose to Lawyer Lady from last season. Cass.
So this is actually one of the reasons that I think that Heidick's win was so impressive, is that he found, I mean, if he could only beat Clay by 1 vote, he probably couldn't have beaten anybody else. So he found the one person he could beat, and he brought that person to the end.
Which is, again, the right way to play Survivor. Is just
right.
Very interesting.
I mean, look, the right way to play Survivor is whatever gets you in that season to get the most votes at Tribal Council.
Yes.
There is no one right way to do it. It is theoretical that there could be a season in which being the most likable and most helpful person is what advances you in the game and gets you the jury votes at the end.
That's probably what happened in Gabon.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I think that might have been how Bob won, right? Especially against Sugar and Crystal, right? It was just by being nice. Palau, it's by dominating challenges. And then, yeah, so you're absolutely right. There's no one way of playing. But, I mean, if you're looking for the most likely chance of success, it's probably Heidick, but you need to be human.
That caveat in there makes it really difficult.
But in a season of a bunch of Inhumans, you don't. Yay, Thailand!
All right. Well,
I'm just trying to think, like, who else? And Fabio, I guess, is maybe the answer that who else has won a season that you just can't imagine them wanting to bring back?
Well,
Natalie.
Yeah, probably Natalie. That's good.
Vecepia.
Yeah. By all indications, though, Brian Heidick was discussed to bring back for All Stars, and he wanted money, and they weren't going to pay him, and that's why he did.
Which, to the man's credit, again, they pay them to come back now. I mean, he was ahead of his time. He was saying, look, give me some guaranteed amount of money to go out there because I'm not going to go out and just be targeted this time. So,
and he was and he was right again.
Yeah.
The guy knows I am an asset to your show, although he probably overestimated his level of an asset. Kind of like a running back thinking that they deserve a lot more money than they do. But yes, those characters were assets. They were selling the show based on their work, and they should have been entitled to more. But yeah, you're not the one to try for it, Heidick. It's like, you know what? How about we just get somebody people enjoyed watching instead?
Yeah, exactly.
But part of why I don't think of this season fondly is, because he never came back, because Xi'an's the only one from this season that ever came back. It's not really, it's not part of the show's narrative universe in the way that so many of the others are, where sort of you see the same rivalries come back again and get refought in different ways. It's just, it's out there, on its own little island and not really connected to the history of the show.
Yeah, and to bring it back to Guatemala, I think that's one of the reasons why it's the forgotten season of Survivor, because it no longer factors. And I think it's also why a player like Yul, who I think is one of the greatest players of all time, isn't in their silly little Hall of Fame, because he hasn't come back to service that fame. And it's an interesting place we are at now in Survivor fandom, that if you only play once, you don't really matter. And almost your season doesn't matter.
Yeah, and there are people whose reputations haven't been helped by coming back. I think especially of Colby in that regard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, people who were
You know,
nothing their first season and like, why'd they cast them? Are the two greatest players by fan vote, Parvati and Rob. So that's a thing.
Tell
You
people
can
how they
send
can
us
get
an
in contact
email.
with us.
Like we got a book this week, which I actually
Yeah, we
read.
did.
John's still working his way through. purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet us at purplerockpod. Leave us a comment on our blog, purplerockpodcast.wordpress.com, or send us a voicemail on Skype at JR Purple Rock. And how you would do that is you just call that number and it won't answer, and then you talk.
You just contact me there. It'll go straight to voicemail because I'm not going to talk to you. And then you can leave me a voicemail.
Other than that, thank you, Adam, for coming on. We were looking forward to this one.
no problem. It was a pleasure doing it. And obviously, if any of the listeners have any issues of Pennsylvania or federal election, it was a thrill to be on the show again. Looking forward to this new season starting. I can't believe I am no longer competing in the Champions League.
Oh,
Yeah, there's really only
likewise.
been one person that's played in every season of that league. That guy's
God, I wish I knew who that
amazing.
was, and I wish we had enough time to discuss who that was, but I guess it's time to wrap the show up.
Theme music!